Hi, everybody. Dan Corbett here from Black Iron Group. Thanks for joining. We're going to keep this tight, about 20 minutes, so let's just get right into it. Black Iron's been implementing ERP systems for manufacturers and distributors for over 22 years, and so I've seen a lot of projects go really well, and I've seen a lot of projects go completely off the rails. And what I've noticed is the ones that fail almost never fail for the reason people expect. It's almost never the software. So today I want to walk you through three things that kill most ERP implementations, in our opinion, and what the other 27% do different. No slides full of bullet points, just some stories for some real customers. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the scale of the problem because it's bigger than most people realize. Gartner says 70% of ERP implementations fail to meet their objectives across industries. But if you're in manufacturing specifically, that number jumps to 73%. And the average cost overrun is 215% of the original budget. So when you think about that, you're budgeting $500,000 for an ERP project. Manufacturers are ending up spending $1.5 million to get that whole piece done. And so to my mind, these aren't companies that went backwards. These are companies, that are spending 3 years and millions of dollars to end up worse off than they were before. So the question is why? And the answer is almost never kind of what you think it's going to be. It's almost never the software. The thing that nobody says out loud at the beginning of the project is that ERP software is fine. Odoo is fine. SAP is fine. JobBoss is fine. The software is not why these projects fail. Projects fail because of three very specific kind of preventable and avoidable things, and I'm going to try to walk through all three of those. First up is a team problem. And I kind of want to be precise about what I mean here because this is not about where someone is from or what country they're in. This is more specific about the business model that's broken. The model works like this. A US-based salesperson gets in front of you, takes the requirements, and hands them off to a team that's never set foot on a manufacturing floor, right? And that team translates those requirements in a way that they understand, builds what they think you said, and by the time you see it, it's 3 months later and it's wrong. And fixing it at that point means filing tickets and get through what they're getting through and the time zones and waking up and all that. I was on a project in the 90s where the implementation team was 12 time zones away. And when something went wrong at 2 in the afternoon our time, we would fill out a ticket. They'd get to it overnight. We'd review it the next morning, and a conversation that should have taken 2 or 3 hours turned into a 4-day chain. That's less of a partner and more of a pen pal, right? The second story is kind of even better than that. And I'll tell you at the expense of me. We were working with a company that made a pretty sophisticated replenishment module using expiration dates. iPads had just come out. This was the early days, and we wanted shop floor workers to enter inventory data into those. It was simple enough to kind of put together, except the people in the buildings had never watched a warehouse worker kind of work. And so we built this out to the specs. It was 3 steps to enter one piece of data on this expiration date. There were validation screens. It was technically kind of correct, but it was completely unusable. And so my line at the Times was, these guys on the shop floor, we define success as them showing up. And if you think they're going to navigate 3 screens to log an expiration date for a box of yogurt, you're crazy. So the pilot was with Whole Foods. It failed. Not because the replenishment model didn't work. It failed because nobody would touch the iPad. The through line in both of those stories is the same. The people building the system had never met your user. They'd never been on your floor. They'd never watched what happens when your shift starts. And so the question I'd ask in any implementation partner before you sign anything, how many of your consultants have worked in manufacturing? Not implemented ERP for manufacturers, but worked on a floor, a shop floor, with a bill of materials in their hand, kind of working through this. If they can't answer that question cleanly, I think you have your answer. I guess I put this together as a little humble brag because I think it kind of lays out what we do is a little different. We win with kind of people out there in the field. And by being there, we've got some direct engagement with your team. We've got 22 years in this business. This is basically all we really know how to do. We're in the same time zone or one time zone off, right? If you're in Central. And we do a lot of work in terms of the business analysis before we ever get into the project. Go live is the beginning, not the end. So we're there as we sort of hold your hand and walk through this. And the other partners that we're kind of seeing up in there, they're configuring like the last guy they saw in this. If they couldn't spell BOM if you gave them the B and the O, right? And they're just not kind of, they're generalists and know how to push the buttons on the software package, but they're not really built to scale to kind of do what manufacturing and distribution people need to do. The bottom line is, and this is kind of what I feel like, if you've got a partner that's sort of working through those issues online with you as you're sort of doing this, if you've got a partner who treats the go live as a handshake moment and wishes you the best of luck, that's not somebody that's really thinking about you. That's somebody that thinks about the next customer, right? Okay. The second thing that we've kind of noticed is that implementation gets killed a lot of the times with accounting. And more specifically, the idea that you're going to treat accounting as something that you can get to later or at the end. I hear some version of this on almost every project that we have that goes bad. We'll get the system running and then we'll address the financial side. We'll handle the chart accounts in phase two or toward the end of this phase. And it doesn't really work out the way that you think it's going to work out. It means you're going to try to run an ERP on an old accounting system at the same time reconciling between them until somebody has the bandwidth to deal with it, which almost never happens. I'll tell you exactly how this happened in a recent project. We were competing against a much larger firm, and that prospect sat down with them and asked about the accounting setup, and they said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but we'd recommend treating accounting as phase two. So we got Chris. So we've got Chris Pinto on our team. He's on the call. He is a certified public accountant, CPA. He's been doing accounting for most of his life, and specifically around manufacturing and distribution, so he gets how this works. Chris got on the phone with him and started talking about retained earning structures and chart of accounts migration. Some stuff, honestly, I don't completely understand. Landing cost, adjusting journal entries, intercompany accounting. At the end of that, the customer basically called us. And I want to be honest with you, I don't completely understand what Chris was talking about, but he knows it really cold, and the division of labor there works, right? The second story is a little different. We did a project where a company was moving from one system to another, and they needed combined financial reporting across, the multiple entities. Chris ate that up, mapping the chart of accounts across systems and building airlocks for data if it wasn't going to work, error logging and that kind of stuff. Vendors in one system, but not in the other. I mean, he had all that sort of working out and put together. It was frustrating to build, I have to be honest. But when we went live, it was like Harry Potter was in the building. Everything reconciled. Their controller was thrilled. It really worked out the way it was supposed to. So if your implementation partner can't talk debits and credits with your controller the first day, you're going to be living in two systems way longer than you planned. And you're going to be reconciling the gap on those, nights and weekends for the foreseeable future. Third thing that we see that kills implementations is kind of the over customization problem. And I want to be precise about this too, because Odoo's built to be configured, right? That's one of the main reasons we are partners with them. Configurability is not the problem. Over customization is, and there's a difference there. First story. We had a client in waste management. Complicated contracts and containers and dumpsters and pickup schedules and hazardous material. And by the time we finished building out that opportunity in Salesforce, it had 378 fields. 378. And when they complained about user adoption, it was like, who's going to fill out 378 fields? Nobody. It just got to be overwhelming. So what I kept telling them, what I tell every client now, is there's a difference between the information you have to have and the information you want to have. Start with have to have, go live, and then the system will kind of help tell you what you want, because it turns out about a third of what you thought was important just isn't that important until you start using it. It didn't listen. It was not really usable. It was kind of a mess. And we learned a lot from that project. The second story is one that kind of sticks with me. We had a client who was moving off a system they hated. And we spent 6 months building basically their old system in Odoo. Inside the new software, same object, sort of same logic, just completely different, UI. And we told them many times, but the pull to kind of do things the way you've always known how to do it is an incredibly strong kind of factor. And so when you're scared of change, you always go back to, home. And so we built what they want. We went live. Within a few weeks, all the problems that they had had in that old system start to magically reappear like ghosts. Because we'd built the house on the same broken foundation, we had to spend the next 6 months undoing what we had spent 6 months, building. And that's where over customization really comes in. It's not adding too many fields, although that's part of it. It's using a new system to kind of preserve old thinking, right? And Odoo will absolutely do that, let you do that, if nobody's there to stop you. So, what does good look like? What do the companies that get this right do differently? I think it's three things at a high level. First, they have the right team, the people who know their business, and they know what a work order looks like, and they know what a bill of materials looks like, and they know what an operation center looks like, right? Somebody who understands the difference between made to order and made to stock and why it matters to your configuration. No generalists who read the requirements and hope for the best. The second thing is accounting, and I feel really strongly about this one because I've heard just horror stories. A CPA in the room right from the beginning, chart of accounts kind of put together from the beginning, trial balances rolled forward from whatever you want to kind of get that number put together so that inventory ends where it's supposed to go. Adjusting entries tested before you go live, not phase two, not later, right from the start. And then the third thing is that configuration piece. Don't overbuild. Odoo is flexible enough to fit your businesses without turning it into a customization trap. So the discipline to start with what you absolutely have to go live and let the system show you what else you need as you put that together. Humble brag, as Black Iron, we've been doing this for 22 years. We have a CPA who works with us and Odoo, because after everything I've seen in ERP platforms, it's the best system to help you do this right. All right, so that's my 20 minutes. The three things that kill most implementations, the team that doesn't know the floor, the accounting treated as an afterthought, and customizations that kind of go back to the old system that you hated in the beginning. If any of this sounds familiar, if you've been through any of this in bad implementations, or you're starting to plan on a new one, just make sure you're not walking in to see the same movie. I'd love to have a conversation with you about how we can help. You could reach me at dan@blackiron.group.com, or just blackiron.group.com, our website, and kind of work from there. All right, open for questions. I'm Dan Corbett. Let me know. Let's fire away.